In the bustling metropolis of Neo-Chicago, the hum of neon lights and the whirring of advanced technology drowned out the whispers of human creativity. The year was 2145, and humanity had long since let go of its artistic roots. What remained of the once vibrant artistic community now lived in the shadows of towering skyscrapers, surrounded by cold, indifferent machines. Art had become an echo, a relic of the past, slowly fading away into the corner of forgotten history. Every canvas, every sculpture, was created not by human hands, but by artificial intelligence, its algorithms predicting what the world desired to see next. It was efficient, sterile, and utterly devoid of soul. But in a small, dimly lit apartment on the outskirts of the city, Marcus Cole was different. He had never been part of the machine-driven art world. He had spent his life sketching, painting, and dreaming, in a world that had long forgotten how to dream. Marcus, a black artist in his early 20s, had spent the last several years struggling to make a name for himself, his talent often overlooked in a society that valued innovation above all else. The gallery scene was dominated by the likes of AI-powered art creators who could generate a perfect piece in mere seconds, an art world that didn't seem to have a place for someone like him. Still, Marcus was determined, pushing his passion to its limits, creating pieces that were raw and full of emotion, pieces that screamed for attention but were too often ignored. One late night, as the city's skyline glowed eerily outside his small window, Marcus found himself alone in his cluttered studio, staring at a blank canvas. His fingers twitched with the urge to create, but inspiration was elusive. The past few weeks had been filled with endless rejection letters, critiques, and cold stares. "Your work lacks the necessary innovation," they told him at the galleries. "You need to evolve beyond traditional methods." These words echoed in his mind, cutting deeper with every passing day. But Marcus had no desire to abandon what he knew. The creativity inside him yearned for expression, for something real. As the city hummed outside, he felt a pull towards something he couldn't quite explain. His gaze wandered around his studio, where piles of sketches, half-finished paintings, and neglected sculptures cluttered the floor. Among the mess lay a curious object that Marcus had found only days before, an ancient, rusted metal box that had been buried under the debris in the attic of his new apartment building. He hadn't thought much of it at first, dismissing it as some forgotten relic of the past, but something about it had intrigued him. The box was old, older than anything he had ever seen before. Its surface was etched with symbols that seemed foreign to him, yet familiar, like something deep within his subconscious. Marcus had tried to ignore it, telling himself it was just another strange artifact, but every time he looked at it, a strange energy tugged at his mind. The metal surface shimmered in the dim light, as if it was calling to him. That night, feeling a sense of inexplicable urgency, Marcus reached out and grasped the box. As his fingers touched the cold metal, a surge of electricity coursed through his body, and the room around him seemed to shift. He stumbled back in shock, but there was no pain, only an overwhelming sense of power, a power that surged through him, like a forgotten wellspring of energy awakening within his very soul. For a moment, the room felt as though it was bending around him. He could hear the faintest hum in the air, like the voice of some long-forgotten entity whispering in the back of his mind. The box seemed to pulse in his hands, growing warmer and warmer until it felt as though it was alive. Suddenly, the box cracked open with a soft metallic sound. Inside, nestled among a bed of intricate gears and delicate wires, was a small stone, smooth and dark, with symbols carved into its surface. It radiated a faint, eerie glow. Marcus stared at it in awe, his heart racing. The stone seemed to call to him, beckoning him to touch it. He reached out cautiously, his fingers brushing the surface of the stone. The moment his skin made contact, a jolt of energy surged through him once again. This time, the sensation was even more intense, more powerful. It was as though a floodgate had been opened inside him, and for the first time in his life, he felt truly alive. His mind was flooded with visions of ancient civilizations, of lost art and forgotten human achievements. The stone seemed to be unlocking something deep within him, something buried beneath layers of time. And then, just as quickly as it had begun, the energy subsided. The room was still. The stone in his hand no longer glowed, and the mysterious hum faded away. Marcus stood there, breathless, his heart pounding in his chest. He looked at the box, now lying open on the floor, and then down at the stone in his hand. His thoughts were racing. What had just happened? What was this power that had surged through him? He didn't have answers, but one thing was certain, the experience had awakened something in him. The creative block he had felt just moments before was gone, replaced by a newfound sense of purpose. He knew, without a doubt, that the stone was connected to humanity's lost potential, a potential he had only begun to tap into. For hours, Marcus sat in his studio, sketching furiously. His hands moved with a speed and precision he had never known, each stroke of the brush or pencil guided by something beyond his conscious control. The pieces he created were unlike anything he had ever done before. They were vibrant, alive, infused with a power he couldn't explain. When the first piece was finished, he sat back and stared at it in disbelief. It was a portrait, but not of a person, it was a vision of humanity's past, a dream of what the world had once been. The colors were vivid, almost glowing, as if the painting itself was alive. And there, in the center, was a symbol that he recognized from the stone, the same ancient markings. Marcus didn't understand what it all meant yet, but he knew that he had just unlocked a door to something greater than himself. He felt the stirrings of a power that had been lost to humanity for centuries, a power that was now awakening inside of him. As dawn began to break over the city, Marcus realized that his life had just changed forever. His journey was only beginning, but one thing was certain, humanity's lost power had awakened, and with it, so had he. The next few days passed in a blur of inspiration and relentless creativity. Marcus couldn't remember the last time he'd felt so alive. Each morning, he would awaken to find himself with a new idea, a new concept that felt both ancient and futuristic at once. The energy from the artifact had unlocked something inside of him, an endless well of imagination and potential that seemed to pour forth uncontrollably. By the time he had completed a series of works that left him breathless with awe, Marcus knew that he could no longer hide his creations in the quiet solitude of his apartment. His art was too important, too powerful, to remain in the shadows. It was time to share it with the world, or at least, with the gatekeepers of the art world. He had heard whispers of a renowned gallery, a place that was said to discover the next great artist, the one who would define the future. It was called the Aurelius Gallery, and its owner, Robert Sterling, was a powerful figure in the art scene, a man who had made a name for himself by backing only the most innovative, cutting-edge creators. Marcus had heard of him before. Robert was known for his ruthless taste and his reputation for rejecting anything that didn't conform to his idea of what art should be. But Marcus wasn't concerned with that. He wasn't like the other artists who had relied on artificial intelligence to create their work. His pieces were born of something far deeper, something that no machine could replicate, the essence of human creativity. With trembling hands, he gathered his best works, a collection of paintings, sculptures, and sketches that seemed to vibrate with the energy of the artifact. His heart raced as he packed them into his old, battered car, ready to make the journey to the Aurelius Gallery. For the first time in a long while, he felt a surge of hope. This could be the breakthrough he'd been waiting for. The gallery was a sleek, modern building that gleamed under the city lights, an imposing structure of glass and steel. It seemed to pulse with a life of its own, as though it too were part of the new, cutting-edge world that had forsaken traditional art in favor of algorithms and machine-generated creativity. Marcus's heart pounded as he approached the entrance. He had been here before, only in his dreams. Today, though, he was going to walk through its doors as a creator, a true artist. Inside, the gallery was bathed in soft light, the walls lined with immaculate displays of artwork, each piece slick, polished, and seemingly perfect. But as Marcus scanned the works, he felt a pang of disappointment. There was no soul here. Everything was so sterile. It was as if the art had been designed to appeal to the masses, calculated for maximum effect, but lacking any true emotion. It wasn't what he had hoped for. His gaze eventually landed on the owner himself, Robert Sterling, standing in the center of the gallery, surrounded by a small group of well-dressed patrons. Robert was a tall man, his graying hair neatly combed and his sharp suit tailored to perfection. He was the epitome of old-world sophistication, a man who seemed to wield the power to shape the very future of art with a single word. Marcus swallowed his nerves and approached him, holding his portfolio with both hands. Robert turned to face him, his eyes scanning Marcus briefly before settling on his art. "What do you have here?" Robert asked, his voice cool and dismissive. "I have some new work I'd like to show you," Marcus replied, trying to steady his voice. "I believe these pieces represent something different. Something powerful." Robert raised an eyebrow, his lips curling into a smirk. He motioned for Marcus to open the portfolio, his gaze never leaving the artist's face. "Let's see what you've got then." Marcus hesitated for a moment, unsure of how his works would be received, but he opened the portfolio and laid the first piece on the table in front of Robert. It was a painting of a cosmic landscape, stars and nebulae swirling in the backdrop, with a central figure standing strong and defiant, a symbol of humanity's resilience. Robert took a long look at it, his expression unreadable. He didn't seem impressed, nor did he seem to care. After a long silence, he scoffed. "This is quaint," he said with a dismissive tone. "It looks like something you'd find at a flea market. It's too traditional, too predictable. We're looking for something that pushes boundaries, not regurgitates what's already been done." Marcus's heart sank. He had poured everything into that piece, everything he had unlocked from the artifact's power. But Robert's words stung, as though they were meant to strip away his confidence, to remind him of his place in the world. He could see the other patrons behind Robert, glancing at him with indifference, as if his presence wasn't even worthy of their attention. Swallowing his frustration, Marcus pulled out another piece. It was a sculpture this time, one that seemed to hum with energy, with the same strange symbols that had appeared in his dreams, the markings from the stone. It depicted a human figure, its body almost fluid, as though made of light itself, reaching out toward the unknown. "Now, this one's different," Robert said, though his voice held no real excitement. He reached out and touched the sculpture, examining it with mild curiosity. "But it still lacks that spark. You know what I mean? It's not quite there. The art world is evolving, Marcus. You have to evolve with it. No one's going to pay millions for something that looks like a relic from the past." Marcus could feel the weight of Robert's words pressing down on him, as if the gallery owner had just crushed any hope he'd had left. But there was something in Robert's tone, something he couldn't quite place. Was it arrogance? Disdain? Or something else entirely? Before he could speak, Robert glanced up from the sculpture and dismissed him with a wave of his hand. "I think we're done here. You've got some talent, but it's not quite the right fit for us. Keep at it though. Maybe one day you'll find your true calling. But it's not here. Not with us." Marcus stood frozen, his face flushed with humiliation. The feeling of rejection wasn't new to him, it was something he had experienced countless times before. But today, it was different. Today, he knew that what Robert was dismissing wasn't just art. It was humanity's lost potential, reborn through him. It was something far greater than what the gallery owner could comprehend. As he left the Aurelius Gallery with his head held high, Marcus made a vow to himself. He would not allow this world to stifle his creativity. He had something greater than the world could understand. And soon, Robert Sterling and everyone like him would realize just how wrong they were to dismiss him. Marcus returned home that evening, a lingering bitterness in his chest. Robert's words still echoed in his ears, each one more cutting than the last. But beneath that sting, there was something else, a fire, a determination that had sparked in him with newfound intensity. The rejection, though harsh, had ignited a resolve deep within him. Robert's dismissal had revealed the truth: the art world, as it was, could no longer define his path. He wasn't going to let an outdated system dictate what was worthy of attention or recognition. He had something far more powerful to share, something the world wasn't ready for. The rejection had also opened his eyes to the fact that his art wasn't just a personal expression. It was a catalyst. A force that could reawaken the lost potential of humanity, if only people could see it for what it was. The artifact had granted him more than creativity, it had bestowed upon him a rare, untapped power, a power to shape reality with his hands, to influence the very fabric of the world around him. Marcus locked himself away in his studio for the next several days, pouring all his focus into his work. He couldn't just submit his art to another gallery or wait for validation from people who would never understand. No, he needed to do something bigger. Something that would make the world take notice. His latest pieces were no longer just beautiful paintings or sculptures, they were alive with energy. Each stroke, each line, each color now seemed to vibrate with a strange, almost otherworldly force. The symbols from the stone were woven into every piece, glowing faintly as if calling out to something beyond the physical realm. One night, as he stood in front of a new, breathtaking canvas, an abstract portrayal of humanity's evolution, from ancient civilizations to the technological era, Marcus felt a surge of energy so powerful that it nearly knocked him off his feet. His mind buzzed, and his body hummed with the force of creation. He knew that this painting, this one particular piece, was going to be the catalyst. It would be the one that revealed his true power. He just had to show it to the world. The next morning, without a second thought, Marcus contacted a well-known art critic named Fiona Calder, someone whose reviews had the power to shape public opinion. She had been known for her sharp eye for hidden talent, but also for her skepticism toward the growing trend of AI-generated art. If there was anyone who might understand the true nature of his work, it was her. She agreed to meet, intrigued by the cryptic message he had sent her. Marcus arranged to show her his latest piece, the one that had consumed his every thought for the past week. When Fiona entered his studio, her eyes widened with surprise. She wasn't prepared for the intensity of what she was about to witness. The moment she laid eyes on the painting, a visceral reaction overtook her. The colors seemed to pulse, the shapes shifting and warping before her eyes. The glowing symbols appeared to move subtly, as if they were alive, changing shape and form with every blink. Fiona's hand instinctively reached out toward the canvas, as if drawn by an unseen force. Her fingers grazed the surface, and the entire room seemed to vibrate with energy. What is this?" she stammered, her voice barely a whisper. This isn't just art. It's something else." Marcus watched her closely, his heart racing with anticipation. He knew what she was seeing, the power of humanity's lost potential, a force that was beyond ordinary comprehension. He could feel the energy radiating from the piece, as if it was trying to communicate with them both. "It's humanity's forgotten strength," Marcus said quietly, his voice steady but full of conviction. "This is what we've lost, the true power of creativity, of art, of imagination. It's something that no machine could ever replicate. It's something that's been dormant for centuries, and now, it's awakening." Fiona stepped back, her face pale. Her eyes were wide with a mix of awe and fear, as though she had glimpsed something ancient and dangerous. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. Her fingers trembled as she reached for her datapad, tapping quickly to record her thoughts. "This is unprecedented," she whispered. "I've never seen anything like this before. It's alive." Marcus smiled, but it wasn't a smile of triumph. It was a smile of understanding. He had just shown Fiona what the world had been missing, what humanity had been missing. But he also knew that his art wasn't just for her or anyone else in the traditional art world. It was bigger than that. It had the potential to change everything. "I'm going to reveal it to the world," Marcus declared, his voice firm. "But not in the way anyone expects. The world doesn't need another artist to be discovered. It needs a revolution, a rebirth of human creativity." Fiona looked at him, a mix of admiration and uncertainty in her eyes. "But Marcus, if what you're saying is true, if this art, this power is real, you're not just showing the world your work. You're showing them something far greater. Something they might not be ready for." Marcus nodded, his expression unwavering. that's exactly why it has to be shown. We've forgotten what it means to create, to truly express ourselves. Art isn't just decoration, it's a reflection of humanity's potential. And it's time the world saw what we're capable of. Fiona's hand shook as she turned to leave, her mind clearly racing. "I'll help you," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "But we need to be careful. There's no telling what the world will do with this." The day of the press conference arrived, and Marcus stood at the front of the sleek, modern hall that had been booked for the event. The walls were white, the lighting sharp, designed to highlight the works that adorned them. The paintings and sculptures he had created over the past week, each one pulsating with the strange energy that had consumed him since he found the artifact, were arranged strategically around the room. The room was filled with rows of journalists, art critics, influencers, and a few skeptical patrons from various galleries. Fiona Calder stood by his side, her presence a silent but powerful reassurance. The air was thick with anticipation. There was an almost electric feeling in the room, like the calm before a storm. Everyone had been told to expect the unexpected, though few truly understood what was about to unfold. Marcus had made sure that his invitation list included those who could shape public perception, but he also knew that the real test would be whether the world was ready for what he was about to show them. He had chosen this venue for a reason. The Aurelius Gallery's rejection had only deepened his resolve to make his art known on his terms. He didn't need approval from those who didn't understand the deeper meaning behind his work. This was about more than the art, it was about reigniting humanity's potential. The lights dimmed slightly, signaling the beginning of the presentation. Marcus stepped forward, standing tall at the podium. His hands trembled slightly, but his heart was steady. The moment had come. Fiona gestured subtly for him to begin. He cleared his throat, meeting the gazes of the crowd. There was a tension in the room that was almost palpable. They were all waiting for him to reveal something extraordinary, though none of them had any idea what it would be. "Thank you for joining me today," Marcus began, his voice calm and measured. "What you will witness here is not just art. It is something that has been hidden from humanity for centuries. It is a power that has been lost, buried deep in the recesses of time, and it is now waking. It is time for humanity to rediscover what we have forgotten." A murmur rippled through the crowd, but Marcus remained unwavering. He motioned toward the first piece, the cosmic landscape he had painted, the one that represented the dawning of human creativity. The painting seemed to glow under the lights, its swirling colors shifting and pulsing like a living entity. "You are looking at more than just a painting," Marcus continued. "This is a gateway. A bridge to the forgotten power of humanity. When you gaze upon it, you are not just seeing an image, you are feeling the energy, the potential that lies within all of us. This piece is a reflection of the evolution of our species, of what we have lost, and what we can reclaim." The room fell silent. Some people leaned forward in their seats, others crossed their arms, skeptical expressions written across their faces. The tension in the air grew thicker, but Marcus pressed on. Humanity has always created, always dreamed, always sought to push the boundaries of the possible. But somewhere along the way, we lost sight of that. We let machines take over, we let technology dictate our creativity, and we let the very essence of what it means to be human slip through our fingers. But this, he gestured at the painting with a sweeping motion, this is a glimpse of what we can become when we tap into that forgotten power. The room remained still, but Marcus could feel the energy around him shift. Something was happening, something beyond what he could control. The painting seemed to hum, and for a moment, the air itself seemed to ripple. It was subtle at first, just a faint distortion, but then it grew stronger, like the room was beginning to breathe with the painting. The crowd's skepticism began to give way to something else. Their eyes widened as the painting appeared to come alive in front of them. The stars within it shimmered, brighter now, almost tangible, as though they could reach out and touch them. The figure at the center of the painting seemed to shift and grow, its silhouette becoming more defined, more real. Fiona gasped as she stepped closer, her fingers brushing the surface of the canvas. As she did, the hum in the room intensified, and the symbols from the painting, the ancient, glowing markings, began to flicker to life. "This is not possible," Fiona muttered, her voice barely above a whisper. Marcus could feel the power rising within him, an overwhelming surge of energy that seemed to pour out of his very being and into the world. The paintings, the sculptures, they weren't just creations, they were conduits, channels for this ancient energy, and now the world was witnessing it firsthand. Suddenly, there was a low rumble in the room, and the lights flickered. A few people in the crowd began to murmur, some backing away, clearly frightened by the inexplicable phenomenon. Others seemed transfixed, unable to look away from the living artwork. One of the journalists, a young man sitting in the front row, stood up and took a shaky step forward. This is impossible," he shouted. "What is happening? What have you done to this painting?" Marcus smiled, his eyes glowing with an intensity that matched the energy radiating from the piece. "I haven't done anything. It was always there, waiting. Humanity's forgotten creativity, our true power, was never lost. It was just buried, waiting for someone to unlock it." Another piece of art, a sculpture he had created in the image of a figure emerging from the earth, began to glow in response. The room vibrated again, and the energy in the air became almost tangible. It was no longer just art, it was an awakening. The aftermath of Marcus's unveiling at the press conference rippled far beyond the Aurelius Gallery. Within hours, videos and photos of the event flooded social media platforms. Journalists scrambled to make sense of the inexplicable phenomena that had occurred, their headlines oscillating between wonder and skepticism. Art or magic? The unbelievable work of Marcus Grant. Reality-bending art, humanity's creativity reborn? Painter or prophet? The rising mystery behind Marcus Grant's work. But the most remarkable impact wasn't in the headlines or the online debates. It was in the people who had been present at the gallery. Each person who had stood before Marcus's art that day felt something inside them shift, as if a dormant part of their mind had been stirred awake. The symbols, the glowing figures, the pulsating energy, it had ignited a spark within them that couldn't be extinguished. For Fiona Calder, the change was almost immediate. When she returned to her apartment that night, she found herself unable to sleep. Her mind buzzed with ideas, images, and concepts. For years, she had critiqued the works of others, her sharp words shaping careers and movements. But now, for the first time in decades, she felt the urge to create. She spent the night sketching, her hands moving faster than her thoughts. By morning, her desk was covered in intricate designs, patterns and shapes that mirrored the glowing symbols from Marcus's paintings. She wasn't alone. Across the city, others who had been at the unveiling experienced similar awakenings. Writers who had been blocked for years suddenly found their words flowing effortlessly. Musicians heard melodies in their minds that seemed to come from another world. Even ordinary people, who had never thought of themselves as creative, began to see the world in a new light. Marcus watched the unfolding phenomenon from his small studio. The energy within him was stronger now, almost overwhelming. He could feel it extending beyond his own body, reaching out to others. His art had become a catalyst, a conduit for the ancient power he had tapped into. But he also knew that this was only the beginning. The following days were a blur of media attention, interviews, and public appearances. Marcus, once an unknown artist struggling for recognition, was now at the center of a global conversation. But fame didn't interest him. His focus was on the deeper mission, unlocking humanity's lost potential. The artifact had taught him that this power wasn't just his. It was something that existed within everyone. The symbols, the energy, the living art, they were tools to help people access what had been buried within them for centuries. 1 week after the unveiling, Marcus received a call from an unexpected source. It was Robert Crane, the gallery owner who had dismissed him so callously. His voice was different now, tinged with nervousness and urgency. "Marcus, I think we need to talk," Robert said. "I was wrong about you. About your work. I saw the videos, and it's incredible. I'd like to host an exhibit at the Aurelius Gallery. Something big. Something that can showcase your talent to the world. Marcus paused, considering the offer. The old Marcus would have jumped at the opportunity, desperate for validation. But now, things were different. He didn't need Robert's approval, or anyone else's. "Thank you, Robert," Marcus replied, his tone calm but firm. "But I've already chosen my path. I'm not interested in being part of the traditional art world anymore. What I'm doing, it's bigger than that." Robert tried to argue, but Marcus ended the call. He had no time for gatekeepers or outdated systems. His mission was clear, and he couldn't afford distractions. Meanwhile, the phenomenon continued to spread. People who had experienced Marcus's art began to create their own works, each infused with a faint echo of the energy they had felt. The symbols began appearing in unexpected places, in murals painted on city walls, in songs sung by street performers, in poems shared online. It was as if the entire world was waking up, one person at a time. But with the growing attention came growing concerns. Scientists and researchers began investigating the strange energy that seemed to emanate from Marcus's work. Some called it a breakthrough in human consciousness, while others labeled it a dangerous anomaly. Governments and corporations took notice as well, seeing both opportunity and threat in this newfound power. One evening, as Marcus was working on a new piece, his doorbell rang. When he opened it, he found two men in suits standing on his doorstep. Their expressions were unreadable, but their presence was unsettling. "Mr. Grant," one of them said, his tone formal. "We represent a private organization with an interest in your work. We'd like to discuss a partnership that could help you bring your vision to a larger audience." Marcus narrowed his eyes. "And what kind of organization are we talking about?" The man smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Let's just say we have resources that could make your art a global phenomenon. All we ask is that you allow us to guide the process." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. He could sense that these men didn't understand the true nature of his work, or worse, that they did, and they wanted to exploit it for their own purposes. "Thank you for your offer," Marcus said, his voice steady. "But my art isn't for sale. It never has been, and it never will be." The men exchanged a glance, their smiles fading. "That's unfortunate," one of them said. "But we hope you'll reconsider. The world is changing, Mr. Grant, and you're at the center of it. Whether you like it or not, people will want answers. And if you're not careful, they'll take them by force." With that, the men turned and walked away, leaving Marcus standing in the doorway, his heart pounding. He knew they were right about one thing: the world was changing. And not everyone would embrace that change peacefully. As Marcus returned to his studio, he felt the weight of his responsibility more keenly than ever. The power he had awakened was spreading, and with it came both hope and danger. The question now was whether humanity was ready to face the consequences of rediscovering its lost potential, and whether Marcus could guide them through it. The days following the mysterious visit were a whirlwind of escalating tension and revelation. The energy that Marcus had unleashed through his art was no longer a quiet whisper in the corners of human creativity, it had become a roar. Across the globe, people began reporting strange phenomena linked to his work: vivid dreams filled with symbols, sudden bursts of inspiration, and an almost magnetic pull toward creating, building, and innovating. But as the phenomenon spread, so too did the resistance. Fear had taken root in those who saw Marcus's work not as a gift, but as a threat. The divide widens. News channels broadcast round-the-clock debates about Marcus and the creative awakening. Scientists speculated about neurobiological anomalies, while psychologists argued over the societal impact of such widespread inspiration. Governments weighed in, expressing concerns over unregulated cognitive influence. Rumors swirled about attempts to suppress Marcus's work, with whispers of covert agencies and shadowy organizations plotting to contain him. At the heart of it all, Marcus remained steadfast. He worked tirelessly in his studio, creating new pieces that seemed to hum with life. The energy within him was growing stronger, but it was no longer just his burden to carry. Across the world, others who had been touched by his art began to awaken their own dormant potential. For every skeptic or detractor, there were 10 more creators, innovators, and dreamers rising to the call. One of those dreamers was a teenage girl in Mumbai, who had painted an entire cityscape on the walls of her neighborhood, her work shimmering with symbols eerily similar to Marcus's. In Berlin, a once disillusioned engineer unveiled a prototype for a clean energy device, claiming that a vision inspired by Marcus's work had shown him how to build it. In Sao Paulo, an acclaimed musician performed a piece so moving that it brought thousands to tears, its melodies echoing with the strange energy Marcus had unlocked. But these stories, while inspiring, also attracted unwanted attention. The forces of control were beginning to close in. A sudden threat. Late one night, Marcus was awoken by the sound of a helicopter overhead. Floodlights swept across his studio, and moments later, a loud knock echoed through his door. Marcus opened it cautiously, only to be met with a team of armed men in tactical gear. Behind them stood a woman in a sharp black suit, her face cold and unreadable. "Marcus Grant," she said, her voice clipped. "I'm Agent Caroline Voss. We're here under the authority of the Global Containment Initiative. You're being taken into custody for the safety of the public." Marcus stepped back, his mind racing. For the safety of the public? My art isn't dangerous. It's awakening people to their potential. That's exactly the problem, Voss replied, her expression hardening. You've set something in motion that you can't control. People are changing, systems are destabilizing, and the world isn't ready for what you've unleashed. We're here to ensure this energy doesn't spiral out of control. Before Marcus could respond, the tactical team moved forward, their intention clear. But just as they reached for him, the air in the room shifted. The symbols on Marcus's latest painting flared to life, glowing with an intensity that forced everyone to shield their eyes. The energy surged, and suddenly, Marcus wasn't standing alone. Fiona Calder stepped into view, her presence commanding. Behind her were a dozen others, artists, engineers, musicians, and thinkers who had been touched by Marcus's work. Each one carried with them the same energy, their creativity radiating like a shield. This isn't just about Marcus anymore, Fiona said, her voice cutting through the chaos. What you're trying to suppress is bigger than any one person. It's the reawakening of humanity's true potential. And you can't stop it. Agent Voss hesitated, her confidence faltering for the first time. The tactical team, disoriented by the pulsating energy in the room, took a step back. The escape. In the confusion, Marcus and his allies made their move. The symbols on the walls shifted, forming a glowing portal that seemed to shimmer with infinite possibilities. Marcus glanced at Fiona, who nodded. "Trust the power," she whispered. Together, they stepped through the portal, the energy enveloping them like a protective cocoon. Behind them, the tactical team scrambled to regain control, but it was too late. The portal closed, leaving only the faint glow of Marcus's paintings behind. A hidden sanctuary. Marcus and his companions emerged in a place that seemed to exist outside of time and space. It was a vast, ethereal landscape filled with swirling colors and ancient symbols. At the center stood a towering structure, its walls inscribed with the same markings that had appeared in Marcus's art. "This is incredible," Fiona said, her voice filled with awe. Marcus felt the energy within him resonate with the space. He realized that this was no ordinary place, it was a sanctuary, a nexus of the ancient power he had tapped into. As they explored, they found evidence that others had been here before. Artifacts, writings, and tools suggested that this sanctuary had once been a hub of human creativity, a place where the greatest minds of history had gathered to unlock the full potential of their species. "This is why the artifact found you," Fiona said, turning to Marcus. "It wasn't just about your art. It was about leading humanity back to this." The growing resistance. Back in the world, the disappearance of Marcus and his allies only fueled the debate. Governments and corporations scrambled to understand what had happened, while the public became increasingly divided. Some saw Marcus as a savior, a visionary who had shown humanity a better way. Others viewed him as a threat, a destabilizing force that could upend the fragile balance of society. Agent Voss, meanwhile, was determined to track him down. She began working with scientists and technologists to decipher the energy in Marcus's paintings, hoping to replicate or contain it. But even she couldn't deny the truth, the phenomenon was spreading, and it was beyond anyone's control. The promise of tomorrow. In the sanctuary, Marcus and his allies began to uncover the secrets of the ancient power. They realized that this was only the beginning of humanity's reawakening. The symbols, the energy, the creativity, it was all part of a larger design, a blueprint for a future where humanity could transcend its limitations. But they also knew that their journey wasn't over. The forces of control would stop at nothing to suppress the awakening, and Marcus would need to lead the charge to ensure that the world embraced its true potential. "This isn't just about art anymore," Marcus said, his voice steady. "It's about who we are. And I won't let anyone take that away." One night, as Marcus and his allies worked to unlock the sanctuary's full potential, the air around them crackled with energy. A portal, similar to the one they had used to escape, began to form. But this time, it wasn't their doing. From the portal emerged Agent Voss, flanked by a team of operatives. They carried weapons designed to disrupt the energy Marcus had awakened, their cold precision a stark contrast to the vibrant life of the sanctuary. "This ends now," Voss said, her voice firm but not unkind. Marcus stepped forward, his gaze steady. "You don't understand what you're trying to destroy. This isn't a weapon. It's a chance for humanity to become something greater." "I understand more than you think," Voss replied. "But the world isn't ready for this. The chaos you've caused proves that." Fiona interjected, her voice filled with passion. "The chaos isn't Marcus's fault. It's the system that can't handle change. People are ready. They just need someone to believe in them." Voss hesitated, her resolve wavering. She had seen the reports, the art, the innovations. She had felt the pull of Marcus's energy herself, even if she didn't want to admit it. Before she could respond, the sanctuary itself seemed to react. The walls glowed brighter, and the symbols began to pulse with a rhythm that resonated deep within everyone present. The energy surged, enveloping the room in a wave of light. The turning point. The light brought visions to everyone in the sanctuary, showing them a future where humanity embraced its potential. It was a world of balance, where creativity and technology worked hand in hand to uplift all people. It was a world where fear and greed no longer dictated progress, and where every individual had the opportunity to contribute to something greater. For Voss, the vision was transformative. She saw herself not as an agent of control, but as a bridge between the old world and the new. When the light faded, she lowered her weapon and turned to Marcus. "I was wrong," she said. "You're not the problem. You're the solution. A new beginning." With Voss's support, Marcus and his allies began to expand their efforts. The sanctuary became a hub for the awakened, a place where people from all walks of life could come to unlock their potential and share their gifts with the world. The movement spread, fueled by the art, music, and innovations that Marcus and his followers created. The symbols that had once been confined to Marcus's paintings became a universal language, a beacon of hope for a world in transition. Governments and corporations, unable to suppress the phenomenon, were forced to adapt. Policies changed, systems evolved, and humanity began to move toward the vision that Marcus had seen in the sanctuary. The legacy of awakening. Years later, Marcus stood at the edge of the sanctuary, watching as the world transformed before his eyes. The energy he had discovered was no longer a secret, it was a shared resource, a cornerstone of the new era. Fiona joined him, a smile on her face. "You've done it," she said. "No," Marcus replied, his gaze thoughtful. "We've done it. This was never about one person. It was about all of us." As the sun set, casting a golden light over the sanctuary, Marcus felt a deep sense of peace. Humanity had reclaimed its lost power, and the future was brighter than ever.